The nationwide declaration deadline for gun owners to participate in the Liberals' buyback program has come and gone with less than stellar results. Fewer than half of the number of firearms the government was hoping to collect were declared. And there's been pushback from several provinces to the program, as well as criticism from numerous law enforcement agencies and police associations. So why is this initiative that is projected to cost billions falling short? Well, let's bring in Noah Schwartz, a firearms policy researcher and the author of the book Targeted, which looks at gun culture in Canada. He has also just published a study looking at the efficacy of gun control laws post-2019 here in this country. Noah, thanks so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so the results so far of this gun buyback program are not meeting the Liberals' expectations. Are you surprised by this, or was this to be expected?
I'm not hugely surprised. I think the program lacked legitimacy from the beginning, but certainly in the latter stages hit a couple of fairly big snags. I think, first of all, the time delay, right? That it took 6 years to get this program on the go from the time it was announced. And that's a really big time lag when you think about other buybacks that have happened in countries like New Zealand and Australia fairly quickly, within a year or so of the incident that the government was using as an excuse to bring them in. You also have, issues like the minister being caught on a hot mic, talking about the politics of the program, saying it's more politics than policy, as well as the program being one of many gun control policies brought in by the Trudeau government that really, I think, harmed relations between Canada's community of gun owners and the government.
Now, Noah, your study called Off Target Evaluating Post-2019 Changes to Canada's Gun Control Laws examines just how effective firearms bans and freezes have been in the last 6 or so years. Do your findings point to there being anything beneficial about this latest gun buyback program? I mean, can it help tackle gun violence here in this country?
No. So what my research shows, we did a deep dive into the literature on these bans, and there's no evidence to suggest that they are effective at combating gun violence, especially since Canada already has really effective gun control measures in place, such as licensing, safe storage laws, and bans on high-capacity magazines, which are really the big ticket items that the literature shows are effective at preventing gun violence and mass shootings. So we didn't find any extra benefit from an assault-style weapons ban. We did interviews also with law enforcement, with community workers, and we had a really hard time finding any law enforcement officers that were supportive of this program. Most of them didn't think it was going to achieve its goals, and I think we've seen with the law enforcement all the different police forces that are sort of refusing to participate in the buyback program. I think it shows maybe the lack of confidence that police have that this program is going to be effective.
All right, so updated government documents suggest that the overall cost of the program could be as much as $2 billion. So does your research find there are perhaps better ways, more effective ways that money like this could be spent to really address gun crime in this country?
Definitely. Some of the most effective ways of fighting gun crime are fighting the root causes. And luckily for us, there are some really cost-effective ways that we can tackle this that also don't involve, angering a large community of Canadians that, have gone through the licensing process to be able to own these firearms and use them for hunting and sport shooting. So, for example, things like violence interruption programs. This are private organizations that go in. Charities that go in and intervene in communities where gun violence is concentrated to break up the cycle of violence and to help get young people, especially, out of the gang lifestyle before they become too involved. There's also community policing programs that are incredibly effective, where you improve relations between police and the community and get folks to come forward and to be able to come forward to the police and have faith that they're going to be dealt with in a restorative way before things escalate to having to use the criminal justice system. So there's some really effective programs that we can use that are also very cost effective and don't, involve large increases, for example, in government bureaucracy. And that can help tackle gun violence much more effectively than blanket bans like this.
And so what has your research, what have you found are some of the most pressing challenges or issues when it comes to gun crime and gun control policy? Because it doesn't seem to be working targeting legal gun owners and going after guns that weren't restricted, but now they want to restrict them. What are the bigger challenges here?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely chasing diminishing returns, right? If you're a gun owner in Canada, you've gone through a really strict licensing process. You go through regular background checks. Your systems run, your name is run, sorry, through the system on a regular basis. So these, generally speaking, are not the people who are going to be committing gun crimes. The problem we have in Canada is really with smuggled guns, largely from the United States. We share the world's longest undefended border with a country that has more guns than people, and especially trending towards compact, easily concealable firearms since the rise of concealed carry in the US. So it's really this smuggling program that's driving crime in Canada, but also, the problems that these communities where gun violence is concentrated are facing. You have young people that don't feel like they have an opportunity to make a living in the way that you or I might, and so they have to rely on these parallel institutions, these criminal gangs, to try to make ends meet and feed their family.
So, Noah, you mentioned America there. I'm curious, how much do you think America's issues and problems with guns influences our government's attitude and policies when it comes to firearms here?
Yeah, I think it's huge. On the policy level, right, we're dealing with a large influx of illegal American guns. When we spoke to law enforcement, we asked them, where are the guns coming from? And overwhelmingly, they'll say we see them being smuggled from the United States. Or additionally, we see 3D printing becoming a problem. But also, I think Americans' problem with gun control sets the policy tone that the government is responding to, right? The handgun freeze, for example, that was introduced in 2022, was introduced in the wake of an American mass shooting in Texas, not an event in Canada. So I think the government really relies on the fact that Canada's perception of gun violence is so heavily shaped from the US to be able to kind of pass these policies.
And Noah, language in this conversation is just so important when we're talking about guns. And I think people who are perhaps not educated or less educated about firearms can find the language surrounding it scary and misleading. The term assault style is constantly used. It's how the government is describing the firearms that it wants to confiscate, including ones that are used in sport shooting. Now, your study touches upon this. Can you explain what is problematic with this term?
Yeah, I think what's problematic with the descriptor of assault style is that it's describing sort of aesthetic characteristics rather than function. Right, what we're talking about here are semi-automatic firearms, which have been legal to own in Canada since the early 1900s with a Remington Model 8. There's really nothing new about semi-automatic firearms. Where the term assault weapon emerges, it's actually first used as a term by advertisers in gun magazines. It's then picked up in the late 80s by gun control advocates who actually fairly deliberately say that they're trying to sort of piggyback off of the fact that the term sounds quite intimidating to the public. And so, like I said, this doesn't really describe any particular characteristic of the firearm other than the way it looks. And thus, it's sort of a misleading term to use with the public. It would be more correct to use the term semi-automatic, which actually describes the function of the firearm.
All right, well, it's a large conversation to have. We've run out of time, but as always, Noah, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights. We appreciate them.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is Noah Schwartz, a firearms policy researcher and the author of Targeted.